So we're going to examine another essay for the mistakes, really. I do think that if you look at your mistakes and analyse them, you get better and better. So let's have a look at this essay title first. Some people think that they can learn better by themselves than with a teacher. Others think that it is always better to have a teacher. Which do you prefer? Use specific reasons to develop your essay. So in the past few years, more and more often I hear people agitating for the importance of learning, especially self-learning, lifelong learning, and other new types and hypes of learning. I thought that was a lovely start. It's always good to begin your essay with a really strong sentence like that, and it's got some nice tricks in it that I really like. I like the types and hypes, and I like the repetition of learning. It works very, very well. Okay, so why are people, this is a question. The why and the question mark show me that it's got to be why are people and not why people are. Why are people so obsessed with everything related to learning? Now, I took that out. It sounded strange with the past tense here, or everything that related. That relates sounds okay to me. Everything which relates, that relates to learning, or everything related to learning, which is related, we mean, and so we use the passive participle, or past participle, sorry. So obsessed with everything related to learning, now more than ever. I felt like this was referring to, why are people so obsessed now more than ever with everything related to learning? And so because it's referring back to the main clause right back here, I think it works better with a comma just before it. My answer is that the many realities that people tended to depend or rely on were disrupted and destroyed during the pandemic. Now, I want to quickly explain why I've highlighted the and that, the and that, the and that. The student actually got 3 of these right, and so it may look like he made a mistake every time, but that's not correct. He only made a mistake once. But I do want to point out this pattern that you very often see. The before a noun and then a that clause, which is a defining relative clause. And because it defines the noun, we need the definite article. I want you to remember that little rule because I think it comes in really handy. Okay, so my answer is that the many realities that people tended to depend on were disrupted and destroyed. I didn't like the had been. That's not a tense. We can't have that. So we've got to have past simple, in the passive, were disrupted. And then we can't say collapsed because that's active. You need to say the many realities collapsed. You can't say were collapsed. You just say, the building collapsed or the economic union collapsed. You don't say was collapsed or were collapsed. So we need a different verb. So I just chose destroyed. I thought disrupted and destroyed sounded good. It had that nice duh and duh. And so, I found that quite pleasant. So were disrupted and destroyed during the pandemic, comma, so he's put that one in, and we're joining 2 main clauses here, so an and would be nice, and the massive shutdown of schools and the consequences that followed made people rethink the things that they have that have been taken for granted for so many years. That have been taken for granted or that they have taken for granted, both okay. Was it just wishful thinking? Thinking is uncountable, guys, so you can't have an A before thinking. You could have a type of thinking, I suppose, but you can't have a thinking. So was it just wishful thinking to assume that the class teacher thing happening in a box-like room, we normally say box-like, we just put a hyphen in and we put like on the end instead of box-alike. We just say a box-like room, and you can do that with loads of different nouns. You see it all the time, in fact. In a box-like room, the miraculous process that, now he didn't include the that, and you can omit it, but it's still implied. It's still there. This is still a defining relative clause. It's defining the miraculous process. So because it's a defining relative clause, even without the that, I've just put it in to make it clear. Even without the that, it still requires the definite article at the start. And by the way, I do like the a positive here. We've got a very long a positive. The class teacher thing happening in a box-like room is the miraculous process that we name education. will lead to the result we were all expecting, and not we are. Just because was it? Yeah, was it wishful thinking to assume that this will lead to the result we were all expecting? I think that works better. Okay, so people have always criticised, not been criticised, people have always criticised the education system, and we don't use opinionate like that. We normally say he is opinionated, meaning he has a lot of strong opinions. But people have always criticised the education system. No one, I think this works better with present perfect, especially with the present perfect in the previous sentence. It follows well. So no one has ever had the illusion that the existing rule is perfect or even good. I don't mind past simple there, by the way. I wouldn't have corrected it. No one ever had the illusion, but the had was on the wrong side of the ever. No one ever had the illusion. But I do think has ever had works much better. So no one has ever had the illusion that the existing rule is perfect or even good, but as no other options existed, unlucky, exist is a stative verb, so you can't say were existing. So, but as no other options existed, people kept embracing the most common approach to educate the younger generation. I think that's probably how we would say this, and I think it's exactly what you mean, rather than just, I mean, you do need an article before approach, because approach is countable and singular, and that means we must have an a or a the. And you mean the approach, you know, that you've been speaking about in this essay, basically, the existing approach, let's call it. And because it's a specific type of approach, I would definitely have a the. But with most, you need a the anyway, because it's a superlative. But I think we probably would say the most common approach to educate the younger generation. Now, here we just say remote learning. Now, I want you to notice the difference between a word like approach, which must have an article before it if it's in the singular, and a word like learning, which doesn't have to because it's uncountable. Yeah, that's the difference between approach and learning. Yeah, I want you to compare this with at the end. In a second, we're going to see the learning process. Now, that's not that learning there is an adjective describing process, and process is countable, just like approach. Yeah, and that's why approach needs an article before it. Is singular as well. I mean, if it's plural, okay, you might drop the article, but as a singular countable noun, it needs an article before it. Learning doesn't need one, and that's why we just say remote learning. Yeah, I know you might think that the adjective remote specifies which type of learning and therefore it's the definite article, but it doesn't work like that. It's weird.